It's become fashionable in the church to talk about Christians as a people in exile. It's given Old Testament scholars fresh voice. If Christians are in exile, like the Jews were in exile, then there must be something we need to learn about exile in the Bible. In particular, it's given fearful Christians, Christians who seem afraid of the real world, a way of dealing with the fact that mainline Christianity seems to have lost its appeal to many. It helps to justify our sense of disenfranchisement, our move from center stage to the sidelines. After all, if we're an oppressed people living as aliens in a foreign land, essentially Christians living in a hostile world, it comforts us to know that this is a religious experience. It helps us believe we're right and the world, of course, is wrong. Unfortunately, there's a basic problem with this metaphor. We have not been cast out from the country of our birth by our government or some invading force. We've not been expelled from our native homes, deprived of possessions or freedom. I was a green card carrier myself, as I'm sure you can understand. I was a resident alien for a long time, and I know firsthand the perpetual sense of not being a perfect fit. But I am not in exile. I am here by choice, not by force. Feeling like a stranger sometimes does not make me an exile. It's simply that I wasn't born here. I remember when an atheist friend of ours emigrated to the United States in the mid-80s. She was incredibly offended because every American she met made the assumption that she probably belonged to some church or other. At the time, I felt very smug. I had only recently emigrated myself, and a lifelong Anglican in a country where only 10% of people attend church, I had often felt myself to be odd in going to church. There was part of me that was very happy to see the tables turned. But it was during those 70s and 80s that the church experienced loss of vision and appeal. The church was completing its long history of rejecting things that did not begin in the church. The struggle with the Galileos and the Darwins of this world are still continuing because the church, Christians, are having a hard time when God pops up in places other than the church. We are reaping the benefits of a church which has often refused the gifts of creative insight and inspired criticism from outsiders. We've forgotten that God had a pretty solid track record of choosing outsiders as God's chosen, and we had better beware. The metaphor of Christians as an exilic people has become popular precisely because we don't feel as secure as we used to. Perhaps we're worried we're not relevant to the world anymore. Perhaps we think we're just part of the roller coaster of history and we are genuinely fading away. That's the sin upon which the prophet pounces, the sin of believing we're just a transient people caught up in the vagaries of human history, the sin of believing that nothing can really be done to change the way things are. No, proclaims Isaiah. See the Lord, he says. See, the Lord comes with his might, and his arm rules for him. He will feed his flock like a shepherd. He will gather the lambs in his arms and carry them in his bosom and gently lead the mother sheep. No, the church is not an exilic people. We are not, as some scholars would have us be, holed up in some refugee camp, bearing the suffering of the world, defending ourselves against the onslaught of the wicked enemy. It's true, we like to rush into our respective castles and pull up the drawbridge on the world. A sad case of, if we can't have it our way, we're not going to try yours. We claim exilic status not so much because we have been cast out, but because we feel we are being in danger of being passed by. We may feel out of context, but it is our role we choose, but it is a role we choose at our peril. We would better ask whether we feel out of things because we haven't loved enough, or served enough, or thrown ourselves into life itself enough. The temptation is to become inward-looking and self-serving, to become a people focused on spirituality for its own sake and not love for its own sake. We are in danger. We are in danger of being a people afraid to look up and love the world that God has made. That was why people were flocking out to see John the Baptist that day. Not because they had a bad case of the miseries about their sins, but because John was proclaiming the beginning of something new. They were participating, they were repenting. They crowded the highway to the river to do battle with the forces of life in the wilderness. They were poised to take on the world, not to retreat from it. The kingdom is at hand. Good news. God is starting something new. People were being baptized because they wanted to be part of whatever was going to happen. They could not possibly have known what it was to which they were about to give witness, but their hearts were ready. They were ready to throw in their lot and go wherever the Spirit chose. Is your heart ready? Will you go wherever you are called? In Mark's Gospel, it quickly becomes plain that readiness and willingness were the key. Only the loving and the loyal, the tender and the faithful could see what was going on. The others, the unloving, the untrusting, simply couldn't see the kingdom when it was right under their noses. They never saw Jesus at all. That is why they were always looking for signs. Bishop Rear of Jerusalem tells a story of a group of Palestinians discussing their future. "Imagine," said one of them, "our cause is a train. What job would you like to have on it?" "I would like to be the driver," said one man confidently. "I would like to be a signalman and get things started," said another. "I would be the guard and make sure everyone was comfortable and safe," said another. Another said, "I would work in the restaurant car and provide food for the journey." One man sat quietly in the corner and said nothing. "Haven't you got anything to offer the cause?" said the first man. "What would you like to be?" "I shall be the coal," he replied. We are not in exile. We are coal for the fire. So this Advent, stay out on the street, take a look at the world around you, participate with joy. Amen.